Hello everyone and welcome to Avantika Designeering Series or ADS as we like to call it. Every week on Wednesday, we feature design and technology leaders who share their professional journey, their thoughts on their domain of work, and designeering where the world of design and engineering meet. Make sure you follow us on social media Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. And with that, let's continue with your show.
Our world has been encountering various challenges today. Among them, one of the most important ones is environment and sustainability. Sustainability has been one of the recent buzzwords. Even though the word has been used very frequently across industries, the concept in itself is relatively very young. One such company that has been at the forefront of sustainable innovation for a long time is Adidas. The iconic tagline, "Impossible is nothing," resonates with profound meaning, incorporating the idea of being imperishable. The brand imbibes the impactful term such as sustainability and innovation, something that has been part of their value system. And today, we bring you the leader from Adidas who has worked globally, contributing and engaging in building sustainable solutions at Adidas. Tanyaradzwa Sahanga was the technology innovation manager at Adidas. With her passion for driving innovation in her organization, she has developed products that not only speak to people but also compel to become a part of their lifestyle. With this, let's get into a conversation with her on discovering designeering while talking about rethink, reuse, recycle. Thank you, Tanya. Thank you for joining us on Avantika Designeering series. It's a pleasure to host you on our show.
Thank you, Rohit, for having me. I'm definitely very happy to be able to take part in your series. As I've shared, I love the vision of Avantika University, so thank you for having me on the show.
Thank you for that encouragement, Tanya. To start with, in the given COVID landscape, it has exposed a lot of things wrong with the way we live. How important do you think sustainability in fashion is going forward from here?
I would say it's very, very important, but I actually want to step out and just look at a bigger picture before zooming into the fashion landscape with you. Um, the way in which we live, or I think what we've been able to see during this COVID-19 phase is that the most important thing is really humanity and nature. And although it's something which we almost want to move past with technology and all our amazing ability that we want to stretch and move as scientists and engineers and designers, if we move past and forget the most fundamental thing, which is humanity, community, honoring nature, looking after that, whatever developments we create at one point will conflict. And I think that's what we've seen with COVID 19. Where we've got examples of cities or, the satellite overviews of nations and countries and even the world that have shown just how much, I would say, in this time of reduced productivity, the world has begun to heal itself. And that's what we're addressing in fashion. When you then sort of zoom into a landscape of one industry, what you're dealing with is then how does the decisions that I make as an innovation manager or as a designer or as an engineer in my industry impact the world? And that's what we're trying to solve. But it's a holistic thing because it's multiple industries. So it goes beyond fashion, it goes to technology, it goes to science and everything else. So yeah, to answer your question, I really think that there's a lot that has been exposed, as you rightly say, and fashion is only one place to begin addressing it.
Oh, that's so inspiring and wonderful to hear. So, here is a food for thought. If the entire population was to wear masks all year round, how can we innovate for it?
That's an interesting question, Rohit. How can we innovate for wearing masks all year round? Ideally, I would like to say we shouldn't need to innovate for that. Ideally, we should start to innovate to solve the problem so that we get rid of masks. Everybody wants to breathe and breathe freely. So, yes, you can design a mask that enables you to do that as best as possible. You can design a mask which has the right type of material to, reduce the amount of particles that can permeate the membrane of your fabric, of your cell structure, whatever it is that technology you want to look at, 3D, 4D, there's amazing things happening out there in science. But I want to go back to my first comment. Why are we innovating to fix a problem or plaster a problem with a bandage? The real problem needs to be addressed. We shouldn't be pruning the problem. We need to address the root. And I think that's the innovation. People should be free. I should be able to see my little daughter, my little nieces and nephews, your children, your nieces and nephews, running around with freedom without having to worry about air quality and how they breathe and fear of catching an airborne disease. So let's solve that problem.
Absolutely. Let's hope to see those days again very very soon. So, moving from the current situation, Tanya, uh, for starters, can you give us a quick recount into your journey so far, your professional journey so far?
Yeah, happy to. I started out just, much like everyone else, a little kid growing up and asked, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I grew up around men and women in my family who were hands on creators. My uncle manufactured cars, my mother and my aunt's fashion business. So I grew up around this idea of creating, of innovating, of using your hands to solve the problems around you. And that's really what I wanted to pursue. My chosen field of application was then fashion. So I wanted to learn how to make clothes, and I went back and I literally lead, and I still do this today. I always lead by the question. My question was simple: how do you make clothes? So I learned how to sew. Once I learned how to sew, my question was, how do you make the fabric? Right? Because great, I'm buying the fabric, I'm buying the pattern. So I went back to university, and that's what I studied: textile engineering. Learned how to make fabrics, learned how to engineer my own patterns for the garments, and then I wanted to work in industry. So it was, where's the peak of application that I can go into? And I'd worked for two other companies already in the fashion industry, and I ended up in the sports world, sporting innovation environment, because for me that was a level 10 of application of what fashion ought to do. So that meant I ended up in Adidas, which is an amazing place to be. I was in the innovation team, so really core central part of the brand where all of the innovations happened. Worked on some of the 2012 product campaigns, worked on some of the innovations that were used in the Tour de France, worked on some of the innovations that were used in the World Cup, and learned the commercial side of the business, how that machinery all works globally, the interactions, China, Turkey, literally the whole world, Europe, America. And then went back into the innovation world, stepped out of the commercialization part of the business, and started really applying that towards solving issues such as sustainability, and then understanding that technology is a tool, understanding that textiles are a tool, and how do you then begin to create product to answer questions. And so that's where you start to see then my presence in a more open platform with Futurecraft Loop, and sharing with the world some of the work that myself and the team that I was leading did. And I think that's really been my journey. And now taking it a step forward, since last year, Q4 of last year, I stepped outside of the brand, and it's really been for me a question of how do you continue that conversation, but beyond one brand. Because one thing which is very clear for me and very, very clear to the world as a whole is that this thing is nothing which can be solved by having a singular lens, our brand, our story. It's something which is collaboration. It's something which goes cross industry. It's something which goes cross skills and cross ability. So I need to know how to think as a designer as much as I need to know how to think as an engineer, as much as I need to know how to think as a lawyer. And that's what I've been doing for. That's my journey as far as training goes, from engineering all the way up. And then now with 37 Thanks, which is the name of my agency company and the team there, our work is literally to work with cross industry, to work with the whole world. The conversation should not be tilted toward one side of the globe. The conversation should include everyone. The conversation should, and correctly so, include cross industry. So we should see sporting industry partnering with technology industry, partnering with the classic fashion industry, medical industry. And that's the journey that I'm on right now. So I'm really interested in engaging with institutions as well, particularly where we have the youth that are coming up and the younger generation coming up, so that they come into the workforce with this right mindset and they're not sort of trying to self correct when you find yourself in an environment with a skill set that doesn't match. So yeah, that's my journey as much as I can put it into a nutshell in a short time for you.
So that's very exciting. You moved from being a designer to an entrepreneur now. But coming back to your designing journey, how does your
Mm.
design process look like?
So I like this word design because we typically use it for drawing pretty pictures that translate into pretty product. For me, the journey is actually very very symbiotic, and it's something which happens in parallel. So I will go ahead and use the term design because I hope I understand where you're coming from in that. For me, the journey starts with the problem. It doesn't start with the technology. It starts with the problem, and it starts by then applying known technologies if they are there, or solving to identify new solutions to then apply to solve your problem. That solution might translate into a product. It might translate into a designed process, which is why I say it's a mindset, it's an application, it goes beyond product and a picture. Um, and I don't want to minimize anybody's skill set. I myself am trained in design, I'm trained in engineering, but I want to share that mindset and that skill set and that approach to doing things, which says you start with the problem and then you work backwards. You start with the end in mind, and this is something which I talk about really often. That we begin with the end in mind, and then we engineer for that. We create for that. And the danger that happens, I find, having worked in both ways, is when you begin with the technology, or when you begin with an opportunity that you see as far as a tool to sort of retrofit into a problem, then you miss the mark as far as being intuitive to your desired user, and then you're kind of almost trying to encourage and explain to your user why they need whatever it is you've designed. I think that as designers, the process always should begin with the problem. What problem are you solving? That's the question.
Exciting. So I want to shift your attention to a conversation that we've been doing on our recent podcast. So we've understood the importance of brands supporting communities. What
Mm.
responsibilities do you think designers and innovators have to marginalized communities?
Um, Again, let's look at the problem. For me, I see things very very top level, and then I'm able to deep dive. So I like the question which you bring because you step outside of the world of product and into the world that we have. And I think that there is a big gap when we as creators fail to or miss to engage with the communities that use our product. Again, I talked at the beginning about um, humanity, and I talked at the beginning about the overall picture of the world. And it applies the same for products. You don't create product for a niche type of person. No one person, no one group, no one community is singular. There are too many layers behind that, and I think we need to understand that as product developers. And then we have got that responsibility to engage with these communities, to engage with um, different expressions of life, to make sure that our product means and does what it ought to do for each and every person. Now, it might not be my job as the designer because I cannot design for the whole world. But what it should not be is that there's one design that's sort of retrofitted into people's lives. It ought to be that there are multiple designers, which is why I say, even in the sustainability conversation, it cannot be a conversation which is dominated or leaned toward one side of the globe. It needs to be a conversation which takes everybody along and has platform for everybody's voice to be heard. Because what works for me living in Germany may not work for you living in India. And so the sustainability solution that's right for you and your community. So as a developer, as a creator, yes, I might create something that you love and that you want to use, but then you should have the freedom to be able to create and go beyond that. And my voice should support you in that. I should not restrict you from doing that. And I think that's what I think as creators and as designers, our role is. It's to nurture conversation. It's to share skills. It's to share ideas. And that should then automatically will translate in sparking inspiration, which shapes these communities that you speak of.
That's touching. In fact, seeing as to how sustainable designing has been a moving force to you, what do you think are the roadblocks in fashion industry restricting sustainable fashion from entering the mass brands and markets?
I think one of the big barriers or the roadblocks is the way that the industry is set up. And again, it's about beginning with the end in mind. So the way which we create product at the moment is really about churning out product by the season, churning out product by the week. There's amazing innovation business models out there, um, which which have enabled this, and the global connectivity technology has enabled all of this, that literally from one week to the next I've got a new season, a new collection, and whoever my retailer is or my distributor is, they can completely transform and bring that demand to me if I'm standing in the place of the consumer to be able to purchase. But then when we start to talk about sustainability, we start to shift gears all of a sudden, because the end of that first model is simply to sell, right? To increase the bottom line. That's the main thing. And when we talk about sustainability from that form of model, sustainability is then the bottom line of the business, the profit margin, the revenue, turnover, all of these measures of success. When we start to talk about sustainable design, we're shifting gears, we're shifting our approach, and all of a sudden our end is now different. All of a sudden our end is now, well, what happens to that product at end of life, for example. Or it's now, how do I source that raw material that has been used to create, I don't know, that laptop or whatever product it is that you're holding in your hands. And then you start to question the model of operation that exists because it doesn't fit perhaps with the end that you need to achieve.
Yeah.
So the roadblock that is there is to someone else not a roadblock. I just want to make sure that we really understand that. And then when we talk about sustainable design, what we then have is sort of a sense of two camps. One camp is saying, well, this works for us. This is how our business operates, and we cannot forfeit profit, which makes absolute sense. So how do you then marry that with new technologies or disrupting or a sense, and this is typically the way that we approach sustainable design, that we have to upheave the way in which we've done things, and that's going to cost, and that's going to be a burden, that's going to mean painful way of doing things. Yes, 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 perhaps, but there are other ways of doing things. So the conversation or the roadblock that you are mentioning is really two different mindsets. two different ends, two different goals. And we have to, so I just want to bring it to 37 thanks.
So
It's finding the harmony between the two. And that's something which is honestly really, really, really necessary. And that's what's needed in the industry at the moment.
absolutely. In fact, Tanya, I've read a philosophy that you believe in, which is waste not and want not. Can you elaborate
Yeah,
on that?
it's an old adage actually, but I think it's very, very fitting. So going back to the concept, so I shared that philosophy or that adage in the concept of Futurecraft Loop and the work which I did there when I was leading that work stream in Adidas. And I mean, it's a really, really simple thing. If we sort of just take a step back from this conversation, fashion industry, innovation, and we step to sort of world shifting moments like the war or wars that happened, Second World War, First World War, etc. You find there that people there's an ingenuous spirit that's sort of developed and an ingenuity that comes out from people in that time where because you know that you are in a time where you are restricted your ability to be able to move, your ability to be able to access a certain type of material, whatever it might be, or even if we talk about COVID-19 right now, there's so many amazing innovations that are coming forward now because there's a need. And I think when we talk about waste not, want not, what I'm simply saying is it's a philosophy you need to approach when you wear clothes. Why do you go out and have this approach of buy and throw away, buy and then throw away? Why not look at it in a different way? Why is it that as businesses we are trained to create in this way? Could there be other models of generating profit that still allow us to have this holistic um, uh, and relationship with our environment, the environment which we operate in? Because when I talk about waste not, want not with Future Craft Loop in this example, it's the wanting is not for the sake of product. You know, you can order a million pairs of shoes if you wanted, and they'll arrive on your doorstep. The wanting is the cost that that's doing to the environment. It's the cost that's costing us for tomorrow. Our ability, as far as access to the resource that the raw oil the crude oil that I need to be able to transform into whatever form of monomer, which is transformed into polymers, which then additives and this, that, and the other. And you move across the whole value chain. That's now being compromised because of the way I've just been churning out. And that's sort of the mindset which I'm questioning and which I question with that statement. Waste not, want not. If we don't waste, we will not want. If we understand, in other words, understanding the value of what you are holding and not taking it for granted allows you to always have to be in a constant state of being provided for and having enough and never needing to lack because you understand that every single thing serves a purpose and serves um, toward keeping you, actually, if we keep it very simple. It serves towards keeping you. So don't, it seems very simple, maybe as a phrase and glib almost, but that's really what that phrase means. Waste not, want not. You are holding the answer in your hands already. And if we start to look at that in terms of business models, you look around the world and you see, I look and there's amazing, amazing sustainability innovations. I've been very, very fortunate to work on multiple. Not all are public, not all are known. And not all I'm able to share yet because they're new ventures that I'm working on with other companies. But all of what I see is remains constant is that the solution is always something that was on your doorstep. We almost never have to go too far to find it. And that's the idea of waste not, want not. Change your perspective. What are you holding and what can you do with it?
I hope and we truly believe that if each of our listeners and everyone here can start adopting this principle, I think the world can be a very very beautiful place to live in.
Oh yeah, can I just add to that? Sorry to cut you in, Rohit. Because of the fact that you're in India, I have to say I've seen really amazing sustainability innovations coming out of India. And you can tell that they're innovations which are literally coming out of the lifestyle, the Indian lifestyle. Um, Excuse me for generalizing, but and evaluating those technologies, whether it's because I'm a judge sitting on one panel or looking at innovations, or whether it's because I'm in innovation or in industry. I've sat in a few chairs where I've had an opportunity and I see really amazing things coming out of India beyond IT. um, and I think it goes to that sort of mindset again. And I always find that the truest innovations, the most meaningful innovations, and the ones which really are applicable in life are the ones that come from the way that's intuitive and true to the way you live. And I honestly really have to say that India is one of the countries which I'm quite fascinated by when it comes to that perspective. So yeah, waste not, want not is something that I'm seeing already and have seen coming from there, and a couple of examples come to mind.
Thank you so much, and I truly feel very very proud. That appreciation coming from you. So, Tanya, you've been speaking consistently about the word technology, and while it's been revolutionizing every field, where is it taking the fashion industry? Where do we see wearable technology meet fashion?
I think this wearable technology question is something which is one of those ongoing ambitions, much like circularity was not until too long ago. You know, when my team and I were able to deliver Futurecraft Loop and showcase examples, just as other teams around the world. And I see wearable technology as an interesting perspective towards sort of our interaction as sort of very physical, tactile human beings with the space of digital and the space of connectivity into other worlds, VR, and so on. What I would say, as far as where's the meeting of fashion, wherever that point is, I want to add a couple of addendums to that. Most of the solutions that I've seen in this space and that I've had the opportunity to sort of analyze or evaluate are very questionable as far as it comes to being sustainable. And forgive me if I'm speaking and somebody out there, has developed something which is absolutely new, but I'm just speaking from the level of technology which I've evaluated. I've evaluated quite a few, mostly for the sporting goods industry in that context, because you can imagine wearable technology for sports is an amazing opportunity. But I have to say that I think this industry or this opportunity is still very, very young. And as I say, it's an opportunity space. It's an amazing, ambitious space for the industry as a whole. I have not yet.
In fact, it brings me to a project that you were a part of, the stellar work of on Futurecraft. So Loop had us all on the edge of our seats. What is in store for it next? What is the phase two about?
Yeah, so with Futurecraft Loop in 2019, which was in April, we launched the product in New York and sort of was a global launch shortly after that, Japan, and other cities in Europe, um, and other parts of the world as well. And that was the first stop. And the concept is really simple. So I said again, waste not, want not, start with the beginning in mind. And everything then was and still is about can it be recycled. So it's a shoe which serves a simple purpose: wear it, give it back to the brand, in this case Adidas, and allow them to recycle it, and then it will be applied into future shoes. And what we launched in the work which I was leading was this sort of first world showcase of saying nobody's ever done this, but there's a space for us to sort of just explore with the world and really ask the world to wear the shoes and give them back to us. And from April, in May, we received all the shoes back. I'm talking about May in 2019. We received all the shoes back and recycled the shoes. So I was still within the brand at this point, and I was literally on site at the recycler, seeing the shoes being recycled, crushed down into sort of back into grain, and then formed back into components that could be used to create new shoes again. That was all done together. Still, again, at that point, I was leading that workspace with an amazing team, amazing internal team. And then in November of this year, so shortly after I left the brand, the second phase was released public. So I just want to explain that that was launched in April 2019 to a set amount of users. So they were carefully selected wearers. So they were not on a public domain for purchase. They were seeded, which means given for free. Um, and then in November, we did the same. So the people who gave back the shoe were allowed to receive the second generation of shoe, from, which was made including components from the first one, and only the people who gave back the shoe could wear the second phase, and that's second phase right now. So that's already happened, and I can speak to that, obviously, having been an active part of that work. And what I can say is that the work definitely continues. However, I will then not speak too much more into that. As I say, I'm not representing the brand anymore after that phase of work. But what I can definitely confirm and share to you is that that concept was shared to the world, was proved on a global scale, and the world joined into sort of this open space of, as a brand, as a team, as innovators, making ourselves vulnerable and saying, okay, guys, I think we just need to go out there and share with the world what we've got and see what happens, see what comes back. And those that engaged with us really did engage, got it. And then for their engagement also were able to wear shoes that had been made from shoes that they previously worn again. And yeah, that's the reality. And that's real. It's no longer an ambition. It is real. It's being done.
Absolutely. In fact, Tanya, we at Avantika University coined a term called as designeering, which is based on the ideology where the world of design and technology blend.
Yeah, absolutely. This is what I mentioned at the beginning, that I'm a big fan of the concept of Antica University. Um, because of the fact that you take this sort of hybrid, I call it hybrid, approach to skills and mindset. And I talked about that again, sort of, I touched on it a little bit when it came to my journey. Not easy to summarize over almost 2 decades of work, in a few lines, or decade and a half. But for me, design and engineering absolutely goes together. And I would even stretch that a bit further. And I would say it's more than just design and technology or design and engineering, because those are fairly intuitive fits. But I think somehow our systems of educations are not yet caught up to the fact that the reality is we need to have this hybrid mindset and this hybrid skill set in the working environment. So I'm happy to hear that there are universities around the world who are doing that. And I think that's a really exciting space to be in. And I'm like I mentioned that when we first met in India, and to all the other times we've spoken, I think Avantica's model as a university is very noble and is very, very timely. And I cannot wait to just hear more of what you guys do and what comes from that.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that appreciation again. So, Tanya, with this, we move on to our segment called as Gyan Vyan. It's an exciting rapid fire round. And here is where I'm going to throw up some questions to you, and we would like to hear your top of the mind responses. So, are you ready for this?
Absolutely, let's go for it.
All right, Tanya. So, if you were a part of shoe in your firm, what part of the shoe would you be? Would you be the sole? Would you be the laces, the midsole, sock liner, or something else?
I would be the color. I would be the pigment. I would be I would be the thing that causes it to be beautiful, that causes to be attractive and still functional. I would be the thing which is in every single part, you know?
Excellent. That's exciting. Any particular color?
I don't have a favorite color. My color changes every season.
Oh, okay, interesting.
I would be a pigment which can change. My pigment this time round, honestly, I haven't thought about it. I would probably say a bright, bright pink.
Exciting. And Tanya, moving on to our next question. Any one major sustainable decision that you've made in your life?
The decision not to waste. It's not a conscious decision. I just grew up like that. And I think taking that decision into my career is probably the most conscious decision I've made. And holding others up to accountability and making decisions in boardrooms that upheld that. That's probably the most powerful thing when it comes to sustainability that I've done. So it's not the decision itself not to waste, but upholding that decision and honoring it in boardrooms, regardless of who I spoke to.
So, an extended question of that, would you rather be able to erase all form of plastic waste in a snap, or have a material that can convert plastic into trees? Which one would you do?
I would pick a third option. Sorry, I know that that might not be the option, but I would pick a third option. Why? Because I don't think plastic is bad. I just think that the way we started using it never had the end in mind, and now we are faced with, the results of that not being forward thinking. I would not want to change plastic into trees because I think trees are holistically beautiful on their own, and we learn the most from them. So I would pick a third option. I would want to see a material that does what nature can do instinctively within itself. Something which can form like plastic and then form like a tree at the end of its life. So I would like to see something that marries both worlds.
Okay, that's exciting. So, which one are you, sneakers or heels?
Both. It goes to the thing. I don't have a favorite. It depends on the world I'm in at the moment. But sneakers are always comfortable.
Okay, okay. And one innovator that inspires you.
That's a very good question. I've not thought about. To answer you quickly, my mom.
Okay, and why? Why your mom? Why your mom?
She's just good all round. I can't say it more than that.
Okay, so the last exciting and fun one. Which food do you wish could be converted into candy?
Uh, which food do I wish could be converted into candy? Like sweets?
Anything.
Vegetables.
Okay, and why? Because they're healthy?
Yeah. Wouldn't that be amazing? You can take your healthy stuff and just eat it like candy.
Oh, that was exciting, Tanya. That was such an interesting conversation with you,
Thank you.
talking about your passion for sustainability, your
Absolutely.
passion for environment. It was a pleasure hosting you on Avantika Designeering series. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me, Rohit, again. And amazing conversation with you. Take care.
Take care.
Hey there, we hope you enjoyed our show. Do write to us on ads@avantika.edu.in. We look forward to your opinions, feedbacks, and suggestions of speakers you would like us to host on this show. Do tune in our channel next week on Wednesday for a new story on Hubhopper or wherever you get your podcast from. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, and Twitter.